Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Louisiana, Missouri. On 3rd Street, which is kind of like the main street here, one of the main corners is ASL Pewter. And all of the pewter that you see in this storefront was built in this shop by Pat and Tom Hooper. You've been making pewter for what, 20 years?
About 20 years now, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's business?
Well, there are so few people doing what we do. Business is pretty good.
Well, this is interesting because what I've done is I've asked you to put together a display of items that are exemplary of the work you and Tom do. And later in this program, after you've shown us what you make here, you're going to show us how you make it.
Exactly.
Is it gratifying? Is it fun to make pewter?
I can't imagine doing anything else.
Is that right?
At this point in my life. I love it. I have loved pewter since I was a little girl. And my mother takes great pleasure in reminding me that I get to play with it every day and that I loved it as a little girl. It's a traditional craft. The traditional part of what we do is really important to us. Keeping that craft alive is important to us. We have a full-time, well, no, he's part-time now. We have an apprentice. He's part-time because he's a full-time student. But he's been with us for 6 years, and it's important that we teach and pass along the craft. You know,
we're talking historically about pewter. You have some molds that you're going to show us that are actually hundreds of years old, 400 years old in some cases.
For instance, the molds for this candlestick, it's 2 molds, a base and a top. And this mold, we call this our William and Mary candlestick. It's that time period is the design, but the mold itself is from about 1800. The 2 different molds. They're bronze molds, and we cast in those molds. We have over 200 molds that predate 1840.
Wow.
Our oldest ones are 2 spoon molds that are from about 1650, and we can show you those later. And then we have about 60 vintage molds that are from between 1870 and 1930 that we make regularly.
I asked you to pull out some of your most popular items, and this little guy here, this mouse. Now, I didn't know what this, I knew it was a mouse, of course, but I didn't know what the mouse did.
He's a cheese holder. So you can put a wedge of cheese or a cheese ball, and he'll guard it for you.
And he guards it for you.
Yes, yes. His little expression says, "That's my cheese. Touch it and I'll gnaw your hand off."
That's right. Touch it if you want to see my teeth. These are lovely items, some of them very useful, some decorative. They all really have a purpose though, don't they? Because traditionally, that's the way pewter was used.
Pewter was never just decorative. It was always a functional metal. It was meant to be used and loved. It should look like it's been used and loved as it has been over time. Pewter became almost emblematic of the emerging middle class, especially on this continent in the middle of the 1700s. It was considerably less expensive than silver, but a giant leap above clay or wood. And you know, people who wanted to set their tables in the height of fashion could do it with pewter and still have it be affordable for a middle-class family.
And it's lovely. I mean, it's lovely to look at.
I adore it.
Now, we said there's a use for everything?
Yep.
What is this little guy for?
That is a cork tray.
What's
so
a
when
cork
you pull
tray?
the wine cork out of your bottle at the table and you don't want to put your red wine cork on your white tablecloth, you have a place to put it to protect your linens.
It's got grapes, a laurel of grapes on top. That's great. Well, listen, we're going to get a chance to see how this stuff is made. Tom is going to do some
metal spinning.
Metal spinning for us. We're going to see some cast items. You're going to do some spinning, some spin casting for us, and we'll see what goes into making these.
And we'll show you some of the cleanup of pieces and also soldering or welding, putting pieces together. Yeah. So you assemble something like the mouse tray is 2 spun pieces and 5 cast pieces if you count the little feet, and they've all got to be assembled. Okay, well, we'll take a look. We'll check that out in just a little bit. Thank you so much. My pleasure. Thank you for coming. Tom, we just met Pat, and we talked a little bit about your partnership and the fact that she's been making pewter for 20 years. You too, or longer than that?
Yeah, well, we did other crafts before I met Pat, but we've been working together doing the pewter. We've developed that from just an idea.
Yeah. And it turns out that even though pewter is sort of an ancient craft, it's still very popular, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we see most of it today as little figurines, and we didn't want to do that because we like the history, and most of the things that are survived through history are not little figurines. They're table services, coffee pots and teapots, and things that are family heirlooms that are passed down from generation to generation.
Now, you're leaning against a lathe here, and what you're going to show us in this process is how you would make a vessel.
Right.
Now, I thought, here, stupid me, I thought that when you were dealing with a piece of metal like this, and this is pewter, that you would have to melt this down and pour it. But you can bend this stuff.
Right. This is a technique that was developed in England in the 1770s. They developed a way to roll sheets of metal out. And that gave rise to a whole new style of manufacturing. And one of the things that came out of that was metal spinning. It's kind of fascinating because by the time that Thomas Jefferson was in France working on to sign the treaty to end the American War for Independence, he actually had notes of seeing this, and he was fascinated by it.
I'll be darned. Well, this would be used to make a small punch bowl.
Right, yeah. It'll hold about 1.5 gallons by the time it's bent around to form.
And we just came from your retail side, and we saw the cheese holder, the mouse, right?
Right.
So what you're going to show is how you bend a piece of pewter to make the base, right?
This will be a simple base. This just takes a couple of minutes, whereas a punch bowl like that might take as long as a half an hour to form.
Okay, well, we'll go the quick route here.
So,
let's see how it's done.
Well, I'm going to start with a 6-inch piece of metal. And it's fairly thick, it's 60 thousandths thick, so you can't bend it, right?
Well,
but it's really fairly stiff.
It is, it's stout, yep.
And so to help us bend this, we have fulcrum points here on the lathe. These pins allow us to magnify the amount of force we use with the tools to push it over the lathe.
Okay.
So we have a very short form here, so it's just a short dish, only about 1/2 inch tall, and so that's really fairly easy to do. We start by locking the piece of metal into the lathe, and it's not quite perfectly centered, but one of the old techniques for centering it was actually turn the lathe on, slow it down just a little bit, and we're going to nudge it.
So when it stops wobbling.
It starts wobbling.
Okay,
right.
when it stops wobbling.
Just like a wheel on your car.
Okay.
You know, and so the next thing is to make the stick slide across. We're going to put some soap on it and lubricate it. And this soap, as it washes off, traditionally they would have used beeswax or tallow, but trying to get those off is just a mess. And I'm using 2 sticks. I'm going to add a little speed to it.
And these are wood?
These are hickory sticks. And we're going to just work on bending this metal. I support the back stick was there to keep it from forming little wrinkles.
Yeah.
Because if you've taken a piece of paper or fabric and put it over a jar, you get wrinkles in it real easily, and this metal will wrinkle the same way. But we've actually moved it as far as we're going to move it.
Okay, so it's bent. I can see
so
it's about 1.5 inches or so. Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to just slow it down a little bit. And we're going to trim the edge of this with a really sharp chisel. We're going to make sure that it's still perfectly round.
Wow.
And get a little bit of tinsel to come off of there.
It's just like tinsel.
Well, it's Christmas. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab the edge of this with this stick. It's just a forked stick. It's got a little tiny groove in it.
Okay.
And I'm going to grab the edge of that pewter and bend it back on itself just to start it to roll. And once we start it, then I'm going to use another stick and continue rolling it around and bring it down to that plate to form a really nice rolled edge.
I can smell that wood burning.
Yeah, sometimes we touch the wood on the edge of this, and the form is maple and it's hickory, so you get a really nice smoky woody smell sometimes. And it's real simple. We'll take this off. I'll hand it to you, but the rim might be a little warm because we just had the friction of the sticks riding across it.
Okay, so just hold it like that. It is. Whoa!
Oh,
whoa. It's really hot.
Well, I'm used to the hot.
You are.
Metal,
You got calloused hands. But.
So that's formed our base. Of course, that piece we had feet on it. So we're going to take this over and we'll weld some feet onto this so it'll stand up off the table and be easy to pick up.
Okay. Okay, so this is where you do your welding. All right.
We have these wonderful little feet.
Did you make those?
So
too?
yeah, and actually Pat cast those for me over on the other side.
Oh, okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to position these at the four corners of this. They don't have to be perfect, but you know that we'll kind of keep working them around.
Handles and those kinds of things all get welded onto onto the. Okay.
And I have a little micro torch here, and it's propane and oxygen. It forms a little heat right in a very small space. And we're going to start by, we've got these positioned, and what I'll do is I'm going to tack one of them. And you can see I make just a little puddle of metal right there, and we add the bottom to the foot with a little bit of this. We're just going to leave that and come over to the opposite one, and then we'll go ahead and make a little bead all the way around this. I wanted to do that one so that it didn't shift on us.
And you'll go all the way around all four of them.
All the way around all four of them. And then like anything else, we might have to clean it up a little bit. And
those are good to stay forever then. I mean,
right, they are truly melted together. And the trick is to kind of melt them together so you can't see where they join each other. And since it's all the same metal, when it polishes, it'll all be the same color. And then we would have one of these, and we can't really see it with the two legs, but it'll sit there, and we'll balance it with this third one.
Yeah, we'll pretend that you welded all four legs on.
Yeah, we'll pretend that and see if it'll actually stand up for us. But then the next thing we're going to do is we've already made a top for it. I'll bring that over.
Okay, and you bent this too. You were able to bend this the same way.
This is done the same way, yeah.
Okay.
And so Pat's working on a mouse to go on top of this. And once she has that cast and cleaned up and ready, we'll actually weld that the same way as we did the feet onto the top of this, and the whole thing will be one piece.
And there's our cheese holder.
So we'll be able to open it up. And this still needs to be polished after all that's done, but we'll kind of do that as we go on this project.
Okay, we were talking about pewter and what it's made of. This is a good example of what you call an ingot, right? And this is like pure pewter.
Right.
Pewter is what?
Well, pewter's an alloy. It's 92% tin, 2% copper, 6% antimony. And that's what we're using, and it's all lead-free, FDA approved, and it's been used for many centuries in that same format.
Okay. And you're going to melt this down, and we're going to actually see a different process. This is called the casting process.
Right. So we start with these ingots, and we have to melt them down. And each of these ingots, like I'm carrying, it weighs about 9 pounds. This pot is fairly full, but we just need to add a little bit to it. And you can see that it just melted right off. It melted right off. So remember, this is hot, so we're going to put this back here where the hot things are. Okay. And these are molds and spoons that we cast just a little bit earlier, and we just need to respect that they still may be hot. Anything in the foundry area where the casting might be hot.
Okay. And Bryce is your intern, your helper here, right?
Well, Bryce is my apprentice, and he's actually kind of gone beyond that to more of a journeyman status, and he has been with us for over 6 years and working with the pewter with us, and he has a really great grasp of working with these antique molds that are kind of our trademark. Okay,
and he's going to pour a mold into a mold for us now, an ancient spoon mold, right?
Actually, it's a ladle mold.
A ladle.
And the ladle mold, this mold is from right around 1800. So it's over 200 years old, and we're still making things with it today.
Terrific.
So, and Bryce really has an affinity for doing this, so he's going to take over, and we can talk about it while he's doing it.
Sure.
And the mold, he's had it on the furnace to get it hot. That way, inside this mold is not just cold. And we sometimes use different materials for helping the metal slide into the mold. And this has been sprayed with graphite.
And that was talcum
and it's put a little talcum powder on it because we want that material the metal to go all the way across the mold surface. And this is a really long piece. You can see it's well over 12 inches long. That metal has to go all the way down into that thing. And this is kind of a very difficult mold to pour, but everything's set up, it's clamped so that it won't come loose. And Bryce is working with the melt pot now, cleaning the surface of the melt pot so that it doesn't have any oxidation. And then he'll take this big full ladle, and he's going to pour that. It looks very much like mercury. And after he pours, just keep looking at the very top of the metal, and that metal will actually change color as it cools. And when it goes to almost a white color, we know it is now solidified all over.
I can see it turning now.
It's turning, and actually, and it's going to.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 3 or 4 more seconds. It's starting at the edges, and it'll actually get a little dimple in the middle, and then change white color.
What if you were to leave it in too long? Is there a downside to that?
No, we oftentimes will leave molds with the pewter port in them. There you go. It's solidified then. Now that's an indication we can take that off.
Boy, that's
and also
fast.
this took quite a while. That means that this mold is nice and warm. But you can see from the bottom of the mold, not all of that ladle poured. Down here we've got a little hole, and the edge didn't pour. And that's real typical of the very first pouring, because we haven't poured this yet today, and it's stubborn. So we'll actually melt this right back. Yeah, we'll put that right back, because it's still hot.
Look at that thing disappears so fast.
If we have school kids in, that's one of the things they love. They go, make another bad one, make another bad one, and they don't understand that we can only finish things that are good. So we have to, we can't sell a ladle that's got a hole in it.
Well, no, but the nice thing is that right away. Look down here at these. Right. Some of these were successful and some were not.
Like a little tiny hole like that, if it's about the size of a big fat pinhead, we'll actually try to patch that and salvage it. I'll do that with that torch and pieces of the metal. And Bryce is going to try to cast this again. Yeah, and the big thing is, you saw a little bit of metal shoot out the sides. We want that. That means that the air that was trapped in that mold has escaped.
Right, and then you don't get those little missing spots, right?
Well, and that sometimes if you break the pour, if you pour a little bit and your hand shivers a little bit, it won't pour, because that metal likes to be in a nice full stream. And you get to this point of it, to get good castings, it's more of an art than a science. There we go. That one. See, we still have one hole, but this side casts better, and it's easier to trim off the edges than it is to patch a hole.
Right.
So that one will go back into. And there are a couple of molds that we have that sometimes when Bryce and I are working on them together, it takes 10 or 12 castings to get a good one. And after that, everything's heated up and the surface is. I compare it to people making pancakes. That first one is always ugly off the griddle, and sometimes our first couple of castings are ugly until we get everything set just right. The proper amount of lubrication on the mold, the proper temperature, the proper amount of metal pouring in at the proper speed. And the rate at which Bryce is casting now is very fast, because we're trying to heat that mold up and get the surface prepared. Yeah. And the only thing we're waiting on is actually the metal to cool down.
How hot is the pewter when it gets poured in there, and how cool is it when you release it?
Well, the metal in the melt pot is 700 degrees.
Oh, okay.
But it gets solid at 465 degrees, which is why the pieces on the table. It looks like we got a good casting there, Bryce. Yes, good for you.
Nice.
Good.
Let's see if we can see the other side of that.
And sometimes you got to persuade it to come out.
Aha! Then you just trim the edges,
trim the edges all the way around. And then and just like woodworking, we do several layers of polishing and finishing. It gets sanded all over 2 different times, and then it gets polished.
Terrific.
So Bryce will continue on this, because we either have orders for these or we don't have them in our stock. And we'd like to have a few more of these with Christmas coming up. Everybody needs a good big gravy ladle.
Okay, Pat, we were just on the other side of the building where we saw the casting process.
Right.
Over here, now this is where you live.
This is my domain.
This is Spincast, right? Okay, so it's casting, but you use a centrifugal sort of a deal, don't you?
Right. This is a centrifugal casting machine, and I have half of my mold in there so you can see how it fits in the machine. This is set up to do these 12-inch molds, and I should tell you, all of these rubber molds, we make here in-house.
You make your own molds. Can we see the other side of that?
Sure.
Okay. Now this is going to be, and this is rubber.
This is rubber.
It's pliable. These are Christmas ornaments.
This is actually a Christmas tree that stands on a little base. So when it's done, it stands like this on a little base.
That's beautiful.
And is a little standy-uppy piece.
Yeah, and then you got little brooms that we're going to see when you finish here. You're going to be able to show us. And this is a very quick process.
Yeah, it takes a minute from start to finish.
Okay, great. Show us how it's done.
All right. So I'm going to put the other half of the mold in here. And I'm going to put a pressure plate on top of it. Now this pressure plate is going to keep it in place. There's a pneumatic ram underneath. And when I close the lid, we are now at about 25 pounds of pressure per square inch, making sure I'm not hitting the sides. I'm going to close it. It's spinning at about 400 RPMs. And I pour metal right down the middle. And this one doesn't take very much. So pour the metal down the middle. And when I can see it coming back at me, I know it's full.
And so what the centrifugal stuff does is it makes sure that it spreads that pewter out, the liquefied pewter out, so it fills up all the cavities?
Right. It's literally shooting it into the holes that are in the mold, that are what we want to cast.
Right. Okay, and so that takes a minute. And so you're a busy person. What do you usually do like for?
Well, I'm going to come over. This is one we cast earlier, and I need to break these pieces off. So while that's doing that, I'll be breaking off the one I just finished casting, or snapping sprues off of something, or something.
Okay, would you show us that broom? That is really beautiful. And this will hang from a tree.
This is a Christmas ornament. There is an Eastern European tradition about hanging a broom on your tree to sweep out the old year.
Oh, neat.
Isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
Yeah, we like to travel and we like to learn about other countries and traditions, and so we like to bring those home and share them.
Now,
so we'll break this little guy off.
I heard that this thing shut off over here.
Shut off.
Can you leave it in too long, or is it okay to, no?
It's easier to work with the mold when it's a little warm. So we'll take this out and open it up and go, hey, that did pretty well.
It did real well. Look at the tree. Look at how intricate that is.
So I'm looking at it, and I'm looking as it lays against the mold. That part's still hot. I'm looking as it lays against the mold for any place it didn't pour. And actually, it didn't pour right there. You can see that split on the trumpet.
Well, you know you're trained on it.
And so I'm actually going to throw that one back.
And that can be remelted, right? You never throw any pewter away because you can use it all again.
We use it all again.
Okay.
So I'll break these guys off.
Yeah, they're good.
And they're all good except for this one, which we put a bad one in the batch. It doesn't have a little part right there. So I throw that one back.
Down again.
So yeah, so normally I'll just break these guys off.
There you go.
Nippers are our friends.
Okay, not to rush you, but when we left off over there, we were in the process of doing the cheese, the cheese holder.
So that just melts back. Bye-bye.
Oh, it does. Boy, it does. Just goes right away. And you have been working on one. Now, this is not the spin process, but you poured a mold, right?
This is hand casting in silicone molds. We make these silicone molds in-house also. We start with an original sculpture, and when I open this up, you'll see the sculpture. We start with an original sculpture, put it in a form. In this case, the form was probably a stovetop stuffing can. Pour the liquid silicone around it, allow it to harden overnight, cut it open, cut the original piece out. That leaves us with a hole, the shape of the original piece.
Oh, and there's that mouse.
Into which I can pour pewter.
Oh, be doggone. Look at him.
And there he is.
A cocky little guy.
Oh, yeah. Love his expression. He hunted that cheese. It's his cheese, by God.
Now, he's kind of yellow.
He is. There's copper in the alloy, and the silicone. Sometimes the contact with the silicone sort of brings the copper to the surface, and that's all it is. When he is all polished and finished, he's going to be the same silvery pewter color that regular pewter is. It's just a little,
just takes a little
tiny molecular level thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, Tom, there was a cleaning process that went into this mouse. We saw how it was created. It's now since been cleaned. And we can take the pieces that you showed us how to put together. And this, remember, was the base that we saw bent, and you welded on the feet for us. Nice job. And now you've got the cover, and you got a little work to do on that.
We need to weld him on, and then we need to polish this last little section. So that he's sitting on the polished piece, we don't have to worry about getting underneath him. We polish that first.
You polish that first. This part you can see here.
Right, you see where it
needs work.
And so what we're going to do is we're just going to use that same welding technique we used for the feet, and at about 3 or 4 different spots on our little friend here, we're going to tack weld him, and that's plenty of welding because it's now molten together to keep him from going off.
These guys sell
and
pretty
chasing
well.
cheese on it.
These little mice sell pretty well.
Yeah, they're one thing that people are really attracted to, because oftentimes people think that the pewter pieces are kind of old-fashioned, and this is pretty much anything except that.
Yeah. And it's so intricate. People like that, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And well, and like the sculpting on this, the face is just so wonderful that he hunted that cheese fair and square.
He's sure proud, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's got a lot of attitude.
Okay, so he's basically done now, except we need to polish him up.
Right, we just need to polish him up. We're going to take him over into the buffing and polishing room.
Okay.
And the nice thing is we now have something to hold on to, so we can hold on to him while I put him around the buffing wheel.
Perfect. Let's do that. Tom, I had a lot of misconceptions about the business you're in. I thought then when you said polishing, then we're going to go and we're going to hand polish, you know. Don't have to do that.
Old-fashioned.
Don't have to do that.
What we do is we have a cotton buff on the wheel that has some rouge on it. And it's a new rouge that's seaweed based, so we don't have to worry about some of the things that are silica and other problems that were in old buffing compounds. So it's a brand new thing. It's on a cotton wheel. We just turn it on and very gently. And you can see how quickly.
Oh, wow.
We're almost there. One more time around the rim to make sure we got it all. And other than giving this guy a nice bath, he's all done. You see the little brown marks from the, and if you rub those off, we just wash that. He's nice and polished all over, and he's ready to go home with somebody.
Beautiful. Okay, well, we saw what I thought was a very complicated process simplified for us here today at ASL. There's your mouse cheese holder, and we saw the Christmas ornaments being made. This one has a stand on it. Isn't that lovely? And remember the perfect ladle that we were looking for in that old mold? There's one that's flawless right there. One of the nice things about pewter, I'm told, this won't tarnish. You use it, wash it, and dry it, and put it back and get ready to use it again. It's been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Mark McDonald with another Illinois story in Louisiana, Missouri. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.